What is game balance? I am afraid that there is no definition that will suit everyone or even most people, but I'll have a stab at it. This is going to be a detailed, multi-part explanation of what I think game balance is. A balanced game gives you meaningful choices that affect your chance of success. And there is no single meta that if you do it, you win. I don't mean you got all 5 parts of Exodia in your hand so you win. I mean, you were allowed to turn up with a Yu-Gi-Oh deck of 5 cards and you draw all 5 Exodia cards and instantly win. If you want to win a game, why would you play any other kind of deck? There is no meaningful choice in that hypothetical situation. All other game mechanics are pointless. The game doesn't function as the game was designed. It is broken. You play with the 5 Exodia cards and nothing else, or you lose to an opponent who has followed this meta. You entered an unwinnable situation. A game shouldn't be released for sale like that, but if the 5 Exodia card victory always came 2 turns later, and games were intended to last for 8 turns, it wouldn't be much good because it wouldn't be fun or considered balanced. One player desperately tries to win in a narrow time frame, the other slowly draws cards. Why is that not fun? For a game to be balanced, there shouldn't be one choice made by one player that renders all other choices near pointless. Do this one thing and win the game? We call that a dominant meta. Meta is most effective tactic available. Then you're not playing a game, you're following a step-by-step Lego manual. And with enough players or skilled enough players in one 40k faction, their one meta is widely shared by the faction experts to quickly unbalance the game. Hello? Sorry. We want there to be more than one meta in 40k. Maybe deep strike heavy armies are strong, maybe all vehicle armies are strong, maybe an army with lots of units to complete secondary missions is strong. We want all of these to be viable tactics and more. And for what is best to change. So that we think about how we construct an army and the tactics we plan to have that light bulb moment of, oh, this could work. Maybe I should run a Battleshock focused Gene Stealer cult army with the Patriarch, Kelamorph and Clamavus. And this is a problem. Not just because you would be taking Clamavus. It's a problem because what is changing too fast to keep up and what is too slow that the meta is stagnant? That depends how often you play. And that leads to discussion about how much Warhammer 40,000 is suitable as a competitive game. Then we also have to have balance among the factions. Just because the Custodes in the lore were designed to be able to kill Space Marines and Chaos Space Marines easily, just because Grey Knights are specialists in fighting demons, we don't want those battles to be heavily weighted to favour one side. Players are a whiny bunch, never satisfied. Symmetry often comes up in balance. If each side is equal, that is easy to balance. Chess is balanced except for first player advantage. All parts are symmetrical, and each player has the same pieces in the same place at the start of the game. Not many symmetrical games have been around as long as chess. We see that in parts of 40k. Tournaments have terrain that is symmetrically set up. The factions are not symmetrical. A Gene Stealer cult horde has way more models than a Dreadnought-focused Custodes army, but balance comes back in as each unit is assigned a number of points. The sides are made equal, unless you choose to play without balance points, but then I bet you have some other mechanic to make it balanced. One side massively outnumbers the other, but the smaller army wins if they have one model survive 4 rounds on the table. No unit is allowed to leave the board. Stand and try not to die. That's not symmetrical, but it's balanced with each side having an equal chance to win, and victory coming down to the battle between the brains of the players on the day. Complexity has to be there for a game to have choices. Snakes and ladders, or chutes and ladders if you insist on never teaching your children to avoid snakes through the medium of board games, has no choice but is balanced. Each player rolls a die, they move that number, turns alternate, and one person wins by getting to the end. There is no choice. It's fine for children to learn what a game is, what dice are, what winning and losing can feel like, and how to handle that emotionally, but you don't see 2 adults unironically playing Snakes and Ladders. Or Snakes and Ladders competitions. Balanced games needs some imbalance to give us multiple choices in a changing situation where the wrong choice makes you less likely to win and the right choice makes you more likely to win. We want a game with lots of choices where each of those choices is meaningful, maybe with risk involved, but equivalent reward. Running down a road at night wearing all black is a choice, but not a good one. It has a lot of risk but no reward in getting you to your destination faster, unless your destination is the final destination, not the film franchise. So if running down a road within the mechanics of the game is a choice, it is a bad one that players will dismiss, because it's not a meaningful choice. Game balance is all about player experience. We want to go into a game and expect to have a reasonable chance of victory, about 50% for a 2-player game where you face off against another person, maybe 80% for a 1-player against a computer style of game. So I could mention the perception of balance. The game doesn't have to be balanced, but appear to be balanced for players to be willing to engage with it. People don't use maths correctly. We overweigh a 1% chance. I think most people who played XCOM 2 and many people who haven't know that the game will show you a 99% hit chance and have a disproportionate number of misses. Otherwise, the game cheats in your favor and low success rates are actually higher. Your first assassin in Rome Total War may have a very tempting to try 1% success rate because it isn't really 1%, it's higher. And if you make the odds worse than that, humans and vampires alike will not perceive it as getting worse. 1,000,000 to 1 chances crop up 9 times out of 10. Terry Pratchett. As in that was a quote from Terry Pratchett. I wasn't talking to Terry Pratchett. He's dead. This is very sad. I was not talking to him right then. Okay, 40k has to provide the rules to prevent instantly unwinnable games, provide the framework for meaningful player choice, provide variety of factions and armies within that faction, provide all units with a balance mechanic in the form of points and stats, regularly change parts of the rules to alter what is best, but not too regularly, and make all that seem fair to the monkey brain. And wow! That is impossible! From an outside perspective looking on, there is a lot going on with 40k. Like 20 armies, multiple detachments for each, dozens of units, meaning one Adeptus Sororitas army can look totally different to another, as one person plays with lots of Archoflagellants and a Castigator, while another, cooler player has 60 Battle Sisters and an Exorcist, the best Adeptus Sororitas tank. Does 40k seem balanced to you right now? The time you type the comment to answer that. If it feels balanced right now, look at what it took to get 10th edition there. Hundreds of erratas, FAQs, points changes, and deliberately named balanced data slate updates. That includes armies that don't have a codex out yet, so their rules haven't drastically changed. It used to be that codexes were the big time within an edition that the army was changed, and so the meta would rebalance around that new codex being factored in. And then there's the playtesting. The launch of 10th edition of 40k really felt like we were the playtesters. That playtesting had not been done sufficiently before the game's launch. The Genestealer cult were too powerful with their cult ambush mechanic, the Eldar were too powerful just generally, tough monsters or massive hordes alike would die quickly to the mortal wounds that could be thrown out from weapons with the Devastating Wound trait. At the time, Devastating Wounds were the same as mortal wounds and could spill over. It didn't matter if you had a 10 wound monster or 10 infantry models with a 2+ save, either would die to 10 devastating wounds. So players are a part of the game. Players make the game unbalanced. Players mess things up. Perhaps all of those devastating wounds and such were factored in from a rules perspective, but hadn't been given to a person to play the game. People will find the most optimal tactics. People will combine things that you did not think they would combine. The 10th edition 40k streamlined rules are missing an important element about what the hobby is. Previous editions had this section, what the social contract is, that the purpose of the game, first and last, is to have fun. Both players have to have fun for the game to be a success. Winning can be fun, but if that comes at the expense of a beating so hard that it crushes one side utterly, and they didn't feel like they could make any choices to prevent that crushing, the game isn't right. That is partly the players. That is partly game design. And I also wish Games Workshop would bring back the sections explaining open play, narrative play, and match play, so that we have those terms better understood, and you won't get two players mismatching their understanding of a normal game of 40k. But let me swing into a tangent. The ruin wall blocking situation. 2 units are 4 inches apart. The charging unit rolls a 6 on their charge roll and fails the charge. Because even though these are infantry, even though infantry in the rules can move through ruins, because there was not sufficient space given by the defending unit so that the attacker's models could be placed the other side of the wall, and because the defending models were more than 1 inch from the outside of the wall, even if the attacker placed their models against that outside wall, they wouldn't be within engagement range. So the attacker has to come all the way around the wall to be able to try and engage the enemy. The possibility of this happening is not explained within the rules. Arguably, this is a failure on the part of the game design to account for how players would use the rules. That is assuming this is not intended to happen. So much of this situation's controversy comes from not getting explained in the core rules. Yes, you are using the core rules to do it, but it's not explained. Engagement range is explained, but not in a way that most people would think of blocking off a wall with precise measurements. A counter to not doing the wall blocking and not allowing it is, well, if you ignore this, why not also skip visibility in true line of sight? Not a great argument to do whataboutism, I know, but what about visibility in true line of sight? Visibility gets a page in the core rules with diagrams showing which models can be seen, which models cannot be seen, and can be part seen to get the benefit of cover. Under ruins, there is a statement that ruins block line of sight regardless of true line of sight. Visibility is pretty thoroughly covered. The wall blocking situation is not explained in the core rules. And wall blocking appears to be a contradiction in the main rules. Infantry can move through ruins without impediment. That is a feature of the ruins established in the core rules, but now your opponent is telling you that you can't move through ruins unimpeded. You can't move through that wall at all. The Terminators cannot barrel through because there are some Chaos cultists able to hold them back. It appears to run contrary to the explicit statements of the rules without having its own explicit statement that you can do it. Players figured out this, let's say, exploit, and now the argument comes to be, is this an intended part of the rules or not? The core rules facilitate it, but there's no explanation of it. So then it's rules intent. Did Games Workshop want it to happen? Is this a feature or an error? Just to explore it a bit more, the Games Workshop Tournament Companion has a suggestion to not allow whole ruins to be blocked off. Like, don't do it. The WTC tournament scene has rules that go against it and make extra rules to prevent wall blocking from happening. Games Workshop has previously tried to stop it before, allowing a 2-inch engagement range in ruins. But that could mean that a model consolidating out of a ruin and being 1.5 inches away is no longer in engagement range, whereas they would be if they were on the footprint of the ruin. And 9-inch charges were now possible on an 8 because of the 2-inch engagement range. It was a patch that was reversed quickly. But does this mean Games Workshop doesn't want wall blocking to happen, so don't do it? Or does it mean that Games Workshop has given up trying to stop it and allow it as part of the rules, so do it? I have explained wall blocking in another video along with why I don't like it. I would say an attempt was made and Games Workshop tried and failed to balance this 40k mechanic. If one aspect is unbalanced, or totally intended and absolutely should be there for games of 40k to function, and please shut up about it, Von Carmian, what about other parts of 40k? People get upset at legend units. Even though these are units that you can use in any 40k game and increasingly tournaments, part of what makes them disappointing is balance. Games Workshop had said that legends are not going to be actively balanced. They don't try to update them. It's very rare to update them. And so you have Vanguard veterans on foot costing 25 points more than their faster jump pack counterparts. Almost always the legend variant is worse, as Games Workshop has points high at the start of an edition, and slowly lowers them so that you get a good feeling from balance patches. And also, you have to buy more models to keep at that 2000 point level. Or if you want to reach 2000 points, that number is a number you have to chase, and maybe they can get you to buy one more box to get there. Rarely there is a good Legends unit. Like Chaos Cultists with ranged weapons are better than the Codex Chaos Cultists with knives. Because one of them has a gun. And that gun can be a 7-shot heavy stubber once you factor in rapid fire. So instead of seeing what may or may not affect balance and affect the meta, people ban Legends. It may be at tournaments, it may be at a friendly gaming scene. And isn't that all an admission by Games Workshop that they can't balance 40k? As soon as they say some units that you can use in your games will not be actively balanced, there's a declaration that 10th edition of 40k cannot be balanced with the resources they have. And as Games Workshop currently has the most rules writers it has ever had, can we claim it can never be balanced? Same with the wall blocking situation. A rule was added to try and change it, and then the rule was removed when it didn't improve the game. But we will always have imbalance in 40k. We have an aspect within the game that is unfair and imbalanced, and if you haven't thought about it already, then it's doing its job of being a hidden imbalance. Dice rolls. You can make all the right choices and all the perfect moves, but sometimes very unlikely dice rolls happen. Honestly, my 10 neophytes should not have killed 7 Howling Banshees in combat when I have 10 attacks, hitting on a 4+, wounding on a 4+, with a 4+ invulnerable save to protect the Banshees. It was the right move to consolidate into the neophytes to avoid getting shot with more neophyte guns in the coming shooting phase. It was. The dice decided it wasn't. My opponent had to adapt to the unfair imbalance added to that situation. But we want that imbalance. Then the game keeps feeling fresh. You can make the same opening moves with the same armies on the same table over and over, and the results and the choices available will be a little bit different each time. It's random. I don't think any game can truly reach balance with its rules. It is the players that decide balance. We see that in all the parts I've talked about. Legends are allowed in your everyday games of 40k under the rules, but player groups will ban them as a matter of course because they are determined to upset game balance. WTC, making rules to stop wall blocking, is players stepping in to make the game more balanced and fair in their eyes. And we see it in tournament data. If something is unbalanced, players react. Not many people play Imperial Agents. They are not seen as balanced. When there is a reduction in the win rate of a faction, the number of tournament players, and I wager non-tournament event players, also reduces. Genestealer Cult naturally has a smaller player base than Adeptus Sororitas. That's based on model sales. But after the December 2024 balance patch, the Adeptus Sororitas were deemed by players to be unbalanced and too weak, and players thought they had more balanced games by playing other factions. We also saw at the start of 10th edition a brief time when there were more Genestealer Cult players than Adeptus Sororitas for the opposite reason, being overpowered. But the Genestealer Cult were seen as a meta choice, an easier win, not an auto win, but much easier to win with. Unbalanced. As rules have changed for these two factions that I talk about the most on the channel, and the perception of balance has returned, more people with Adeptus Sororitas collections play them, and slightly fewer people with Genestealer Cult and other collections commit the Genestealer Cult to the table. Not everyone is a hardcore Keep the Faith Sisters player like me, carrying on through thick and thin. And using tournament data to figure out balance is also flawed. If you do it by faction, that means that some detachments that are not played, like the Brood Brothers Auxilia, have their imbalance compared to the Host of Ascension totally ignored. If you do track it by detachment, then you see much more imbalance, but people don't mind as much. Within team tournaments, you can factor out some of the imbalances between two sides, or within multiplayer games, players can balance overpowered armies by teaming up against them. In Wingspan as a game, that's multiplayer, but you can't do too much to stop other players. It sometimes feels like you're playing lots of single-player games and then you add up the points at the end. It's not the perfect example of that type of game, but I think more of you will have heard of Wingspan than Dungeons of the North Tower, which has the same problem to a worse level. and is a game I just made up to provide an example when no other one came to mind. Dropping tip money in my Ko-fi jar won't make Dungeons of the North Tower happen, it will just make me happy. Root. Root is a multiplayer game, and you can affect other players more directly and target them. The factions are not balanced, but that doesn't seem to be a problem. And if you know that the factions are not balanced, you can prioritize taking out the strongest faction until people don't want to play the Underground Duchy of the Moles or whichever is the strongest because you get ganged up on. If you know that. Player skill and knowledge is a factor. And then you can play the much cooler Woodland Alliance and rise up against the oppressor. But imbalance is countered by players. Or to be more Warhammer, Chaos in the Old World, the board game. The 4 Chaos Gods and the Horned Rat with the expansion spread across the Old World and vie to be the one that destroys it. If no one does, Chaos is defeated and all the players lose, but that is very unlikely. The first few times I played it, we termed it 8 turns until Khorne wins. Knowing that, we teamed up on Khorne and it was Slaanesh or Tzeentch whose subtle schemes won the day in the next few games. Who to counter also changes mid-game, as you can see victory points indicating the current winner. Balancing a 2-player game is harder. In most 40k games, you don't have multiple players to balance an overpowered Eldari army. So if 1v1 40k is imbalanced, why do we play it? What I set as the deliberate purpose of balance, to have 2 players play a game with a winner determined by the player with the brain to adapt to the situation of the rules, we ignore that most fundamental part of what I thought we all wanted all of the time. If you are against a new player, their brain has not experienced 40k rules before, and unintuitive tactics won't be part of their gameplay. Move blocking is a tactic of standing in front of the enemy to prevent them from moving much in the movement phase. That sort of idea rarely comes to new players unless pointed out to them. So you point it out to them, and you go easy on new players. You add imbalance to the game state to give the new player more of a chance to win. You may play an army with fewer points, or you disclose information that you didn't need to, like your game plan and weaknesses. It is considered very bad form not to imbalance the game to help the new player. Crushing a starry-eyed novice with their first Space Marines, especially a child, can get you ostracized. And 40k is varied enough, with such an assortment of missions and units and stories in the Crusade rules, that imbalance rarely creeps into most games in a way that we notice. Or if we notice it, we rarely care about it. Tournament players that play a limited number of missions on the same L-shaped ruins that try to play meta armies have more trouble with balance. If the imbalance gets to everyday players as the Votann Codex in 9th edition did, play Votann, have an easy game, play Eldari in early 10th edition, have an easier game, as long as those extreme cases don't happen again, imbalance is not a big issue. And if you find that your tournament meta needs to change, go to a tournament outside your local area. Suddenly you find a different meta. Why is everyone playing tanks? Massed infantry is how you win where I play. Why is the Eldar army all jet bikes? Why is it not Wraithguard? That keeps it fun. The first and last purpose of a game. But what does Games Workshop want to do? Do they care more about narrative or competitive 40k? That is the next big question in the next video. My darlings and viewers, have a great day of 40k.